Hi everyone, welcome back. If you've ever wanted to have a garden but didn't know where to start, this video is for you. Today I'm showing you how to use AI to plan a perennial garden, a vegetable garden, and even add plants to a photo of your space. I'll walk through real examples, the exact prompts that I use, and a method where AI actually asks you the questions, so you don't need to know anything before you start. Let's jump in. Garden planning can feel overwhelming. There are so many plants, so many layouts, so many decisions to make. AI helps by breaking everything down into simple steps. It can visualize ideas, suggest plants based on your sunlight or style or location, and help you learn as you go. You don't need to know plant names or design terms. You can just describe what you want your space to look like or to feel like. If you're early on in your gardening journey, you don't necessarily have all the words or know all of the different pieces that would go into a typical garden design. And that's where AI comes in. And I'll show you a method in a second where you need to know virtually nothing about gardening other than, where the sun is and what you like. And it'll guide you through making the decisions that will make a good garden plan. But even if you do have some knowledge, if it's your first or second or third season under your belt, or even if you're a seasoned gardener, using a tool like AI can help just streamline the image or the design or the vision that you have in mind, pick plants, offer up some considerations that you might not have thought of otherwise. It's a fantastic tool. But one of my favorite ways to use AI, especially if you're new, is to let it ask you the questions. This is such a confidence builder for beginner gardeners. You just answer a few easy questions and AI builds a plan around your space. Okay, so first thing you're going to need to do is I'm using ChatGPT. I've tried a few tools. I've tried Google Gemini. I've tried Microsoft Copilot. I prefer ChatGPT for the gardening stuff just because their images are a little bit more realistic in terms of plants, and we'll get to that in a second. So browse to chatgpt.com or download the app if you're using a phone or a tablet or something like that. I'm using it on my computer right now just because it's easier to share screenshots and things with you guys. So navigate to chatgpt.com, create an account, and all that is, once you go in to log in or sign up, choose create an account, and you have the option to either continue with Google, with Apple, with Microsoft, or with your phone, or any other email address. So basically, having an account allows you to save all your previous chats and discussions and things, and it's useful to be able to go back to. You don't have to do it. You can just use it on the fly and just start, typing in things, but it just won't save that, save the history of the things that you've asked it to do. So once you sign up and you want to get going, you'll click on, in the top left, there's a button called New Chat. So do that. Okay, and the prompt that I'm using for this, because I want the AI tool to ask me questions, I'm using, I want to plant a garden, but I'm not sure where to start. Ask me one question at a time, wait for my answer before asking the next question, and then use my answers to create a simple, beginner-friendly garden plan. And I insert the note to ask me one question at a time, because otherwise, if you just leave it open-ended, I want to plant a garden, but I'm not sure where to start, ask me questions, it'll send you a wall of text, which is difficult to respond to and overwhelming all at once. Remember that the tool is just that. You're the boss. You're telling it what to do. You're telling it how to interact with you. So asking it to ask you things one at a time is perfectly reasonable. It won't get offended, don't worry. So let's hit enter and see what it asks us. So first thing it asks is, what kind of space do you have for your flower garden? And then I basically respond, it's a 4x10. A rectangle, it's in my front yard, it's next to the driveway. Next question, how much sun does this spot get during the day? Is it full sun? And it kind of tells you full sun is considered 6+ hours a day, partial sun 3 to 6, or is it mostly shade, less than 3 hours? And I responded, it gets full sun in the morning, it's shaded in the afternoon. So the tool now knows that it needs to select plants or suggest plants that work in that lighting situation. Then it wants to know what kind of style, what kind of look and feel would you like this garden to have? Do you want it colorful? Do you want it soft? Do you want it like a meadow style with wildflowers? Do you want it structured and formal, low maintenance? So this is where you can put in whatever adjectives or things that you want that garden, how you want it to look, how you want it to make you feel, anything in terms of maintenance. And you could put whatever you want in here. So I just said I'd like some structure, some color. I don't like the wild or meadow look. I want it low maintenance, and I want it to look good for the whole season. Next question is, do we want it to be more perennial, so plants that come back every year, or annuals, which are, it's a better show for annuals. There's more color, longer blooming, but you have to replace them every year. I chose perennials, so now it knows that it's going to choose, or it's going to recommend perennials that are low maintenance, that have long-lasting structure, so they look good all year long, and there's color. Then it asks, what colors do you like? Or is there anything you want to avoid? So I said that I liked purple, pink, blues, and whites. I didn't like orange, yellows, or reds. So now that it's further streamlining what plants to recommend as part of this garden plan that the tool is going to suggest to me. Next question is, how tall? Do you want everything one height? Do you want some stuff that are taller, some that are lower? And I just said, I want a variety, maybe even a small ornamental tree in there. So now it understands that what my needs are in terms of height variation. And then it's asking about maintenance. How much maintenance am I willing to spend in this garden? Do I want it very minimal? Am I okay with a little bit of maintenance? Usually what they think about of maintenance is like pruning time, just taking care of the plants that it's going to be suggesting. I just said half an hour a week is okay. So now we know they'll focus on low maintenance perennials, minimal pruning, easy watering, and then do you want your garden to have seasonal bloom? So something is flowering almost all year, or are you okay with just spring and fall blooms? I said I want something to be in bloom throughout the season, just to have some ongoing interest going on in that garden bed since it's in the front yard. Next question, do I want evergreen elements? Shrub or ground cover that stay green in the winter? I said yes. Do you want your garden to have any scent or fragrance? Because some people are sensitive to that. I said, I like fragrance, but since it's in the front yard and we don't really hang out there much, it's not really a critical factor. And then specifically with regards to the small tree, do you want something with flowers or colorful foliage or berries? Like, how much of a wow factor do you want this tree to be? And I said, I want a flowering tree. So now it's ready to put out the plan. So it starts off with the structure, what it's recommending for the focal point, which is the tree. What the mid-height layer is, there's a few different shrubs and perennials in there, including lavender and salvia and nepeta, Walker's Low catmint. Then there's the low layer, which is in the front. So there's heuchera, geranium, and hosta, and then evergreen accent plants for the winter, including boxwoods and hellebores. Talks about the color, why it's recommended those plants, because of the color choices that I asked for. The maintenance is about 30 minutes a week. Talks about what would be needed there in terms of watering and pruning and mulching and deadheading. And then in terms of seasonal interest, what's going on during each of those seasons in that flower bed to give me an idea of what it'll actually look like. Then it asked, do you want me to create a visual image of what this bed will look like? So I said yes to that. And then it took some time to create the image. That part takes a minute or so just to let it do its thing. So you'll see this is a rough image of what that bed will look like, including all the plants that it suggested. And then I asked it, can you provide a plant spacing chart so that I know where to plant things in this 4x10 space? And then it created this table, which essentially lists the plant, where it's going in the bed, how big it is at its mature size, and the recommended spacing from the edge and from the side edges, from like the front and back and from the side edges, just to give me an idea of where I'm supposed to be planting all this stuff. And then one of my favorite things to ask is, can you describe how the flower bed will look in each season? Basically explaining what blooms when, so I have a better idea of how it'll look in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, which is really cool. And it tells you, like for each season, well, the flowering tree is going to be the focal point because it's going to be in bloom, and then in summer, the lavender and the salvia are going to start blooming. They'll be they'll be in full bloom, and the catmint as well. And then what happens in midsummer and late summer and early fall. And then in the winter time, what's going to look good at that time. So you can kind of visualize what that will look like. And I mean, you can keep going and, ask it questions. How do I plant things? Why this plant over this plant? Can I swap this out for this? And all kinds of things. Like it's never ending, right? Your imagination is your only limitation, essentially. But I wanted to demonstrate this because you can have it ask you what's important when designing a garden. You don't have to know. You don't need to know. All you need to know is that you want a garden, and then help walk me through it, AI tool. And then it's basically your kind of like a helper in the garden. The suggestions and the recommendations are all still based on your taste, right? It's your garden, it's what you want, and then it just tailors its responses and its recommendations based on that. All right, now let's jump over to planning a vegetable garden. And I'm still gonna do it as a beginner gardener, just to show you how easy it actually is. Just to get the process rolling and get that conversation started using an AI tool. So this is the prompt I'm using. Create a 4x8 beginner-friendly vegetable garden, easy crops only, includes spacing, plant quantities, and a simple layout. Well, we're going to leave it as simple as that and click the go button, and we'll see what it comes back with. So it confirms it's 32 square feet, beginner-friendly vegetable garden, easy, productive, low-maintenance crops. It'll provide a square foot gardening style layout, 1 plant per square foot for small crops, 1 per 2 to 3 square feet for larger crops. And it lists the suggested crops for a beginner garden. That's a 4x8 size. Tells us how much space per plant, so how to plant it, how many to plant within each square foot, and some notes about any specific needs. Like as an example, a cherry tomato plant needs a cage or stake support, for example. So let's keep going. This, for whatever reason, it likes to do it. It's got this weird graphical layout of things, and it's got like a little legend here, like the LL. This is lettuce, radish. It's all good. So I find sometimes this isn't as easy to read, but that's fine. And that just explains a little bit about how the tall plants go on the north side so that they don't shade the smaller crops. Succession planting, if you wanted to, you can replant every 2 to 3 weeks to keep a steady harvest. Talks about spacing. Then it asks us if we want to draw a visual grid with labeled squares, so it's super easy to plant exactly where everything goes. I'm going to say yes to that. And we'll see what it comes up with. And this is essentially the first kick at the can of, give me a vegetable garden, this is how much space I have, I'm a beginner, make it easy, send me a list. And then if it comes back with things that you don't particularly like let's say you don't like radish, or you don't like carrots, or you don't really eat bush beans, you can ask it to swap this out for something else, or anything like that. If you don't like the herbs that it's recommending, basil or parsley, you don't need parsley, ask for another recommendation, essentially. And it's super easy. And then if it's tall plants, north, succession planting, supports, harvesting, spacing, I can turn this into a color-coded diagram that's easy for well, let's not do that today. But what I will ask about seeds versus starts. And then I'm going to ask it, can I buy starts versus starting seeds indoors? So not everybody is comfortable with that. Not everybody has the space to start seeds indoors. But if I ask the question, it will tell me, yes, you can use starts instead of seeds for many crops. And quite often, if you don't have the space to start your own seeds indoors or you're not comfortable with that process, you can buy starts for certain plants, usually the warm weather plants like tomatoes and things like that. You can buy those at the store or the garden center, and then seed the easy stuff that's better to start directly from seed, like lettuce and things like that. So here it tells us which crops we can buy as starts and why buy starts versus when to sow seeds directly. Like root crops, they just do better if you start the seeds outdoors, but you don't have to start them indoors. That's the point, right? You can buy little plants at the garden center and plant those when the time comes, and then sow seeds directly outside into your garden bed when the time comes. And then, speak of the devil, I can make a planting schedule showing which crops to start. Did you want me to make that schedule? Yes, I do. And it's so quick, you guys. Like it's so fast. It's got all the information at its fingertips. It just makes it super, super quick. Okay, so it tells us for lettuce, we're going to do it from seed. We're going to direct sow early spring or every 2 to 3 weeks for succession. And then you know what? I want it to tell me exact dates, since sample timeline assuming last frost in mid-May. Okay, so it's actually pretty close to, I'm in a zone 6. If we wanted to have the tool specify, we can just say, please you know what? Let's do it. Please adjust the schedule based on my location. I'm in Halifax, zone 6. It might not actually change much of everything. Last frost around May 10-15, first frost around October 10-15, workable growing season, that's all good. That's pretty good. Mid-May, which is technically what I normally do. So I can vouch for the accuracy of the responses, of the results here. If we wanted to do succession planting, so that is sowing some seeds for lettuce, spinach, and radish, and then sow a few more, and then sow a few more, so that you have an ongoing harvest. That's what that's all about. And then they tell you what's going to be happening in spring, summer, and fall. And it even suggests which varieties do well in your area. So if you're not familiar with which varieties that you want to grow, asking the tool to provide a list of things that actually have grown successfully in your area is always a good idea. So we got this whole thing in just a few minutes. At least it's a good starting point. Like if you're a new gardener, it's a great starting point just to get going. If you have questions about what soil to use, when to put compost, what type of compost, when to water, how should you do things, like all of these questions can be asked as part of this conversation that you're having with an AI tool. I've been using it for at least a year or two now. And I use AI, not just for gardening, I use it for almost everything. And the information that it does provide is actually pretty good. There are certain things where you may question some things, and then you can go and double check that and, do your own research. But for the most part, it's actually pretty good. Okay, let's jump over to designing a perennial bed. And for this one, I actually, I started out with my idea. I already have a pollinator garden planted, and I wanted to see if giving the appropriate parameters to the tool, if it would come up with something similar that I had already decided and planted last year. So the prompt that I'm using is, I have a pollinator garden along the south side of the house in full sun. I'm going for purples, lavenders, white. The plants I'm envisioning include butterfly bush, baptisia, salvia, catmint, echinacea, asters, and amsonia. What is a good design plan? And the bed is 45 feet long and starts at 4 feet wide and gradually widens to 7 feet. So I'm pretending that I haven't planted this out already just to see what the AI tool would do. So there's my prompt, and this is what it returned in terms of results. So it calculated what the actual size is, or just reconfirming that it's 45 feet long, 4 to 7. And the key is repetition and layering and season of succession, so that there's blooms throughout the season, which is great. The overall strategy that it's recommending is the back row of tall anchors, the mid layer, and the front edge. And you'll see that's a very common theme when doing any kind of garden design, that there's like a staggered or a layered approach, which is fine. It says it's recommending that we treat it as 3 sections: the narrow start, which is 4 feet, the middle, and then at the very end where it's 7 feet. All of that is good. Keep it simple and vertical. So they're focusing on the narrow end first, which is the first piece of the bed, which is at 4 feet wide. It's kind of like it's a rectangle, but it just goes from narrow to wider down at the base. And it provides some sample pictures of the plants that I listed there. So the butterfly bush, the baptisia, another butterfly bush, the mid layer suggesting echinacea and amsonia because they're a little bit shorter, and then the front edge doing the catmint and the salvia. So the middle section, it's just in the 5 to 6 feet wide. It's the same plants, but just spaced out a little bit differently. I'm not going to go line by line on this. If you want to, feel free to pause the video and read through it. Go right ahead. Section 3, wide end, focal area, create a pollinator crescent. The back row, the butterfly bushes, 2 baptisia between them. So it's really outlining how it thinks it should be laid out based on the space, because it's not like a straight up rectangle, just giving it a little bit of a different feel. And then we've got some, these are echinacea. That's the nepeta there. That's just sample photos that they're including. So the bloom timeline, they're saying that in late spring, the baptisia and the salvia are going to be in bloom. Then the catmint and amsonia foliage grow. I'm not convinced about that. I think that's a spring bloomer. See, those are those little things that, because I know, I'm not too sure if that's accurate, but we're going to go with it. Midsummer, echinacea and butterfly bush. And then actually early summer is technically June, so that might actually be all right in my area. And then late summer and fall, the asters are in bloom. And then continuous pollinator activity from May through October, which I can vouch for that. That actually did happen last year. It was really, really cool. Color strategy, to stay true to purple, lavender, white. Choose white echinacea mixed with purple. Pick lavender toned asters. Use the pale blue amsonia for softness, and consider 1 white butterfly bush to break up the purple. That's actually a good recommendation. Too much dark purple can feel heavy. And then talking about the spacing guide and how to plant it. And then resist overplanting it will fill in beautifully by year 3, which is interesting because it does look pretty sparse right now, but knowing that those plants are going to, grow into themselves and get closer to their mature size. So I thought this was a pretty cool exercise. And I had a lot of back and forth, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll just scroll through really quickly. I reconfirmed the plant selection because I knew which varieties I had actually planted in the garden last year. So then it updated that based on my choices. More visual references of the plants that I chose. God, I look at it again today and it looks awesome. I'm glad I chose those plants. Anyway, let's moving right along. I'm talking about how this is now with those specific varieties. It's giving me a new planting schema. The balance, dark purple, pink, purple, lavender, blue, and white. Keep white cone flowers in larger drifts than any other mid-layer plant, just to offset all that purple, which I thought was a good suggestion, providing how many plants I should get of each of the varieties to fill in that whole 4 by 45 square foot flower bed. It'll look full by year 3. So essentially don't overplant, because you'll end up either there's going to be overcrowding or you'll have to remove some things. What else good? They asked me what zone I'm gardening in, so I responded 6A, Nova Scotia. And then I actually appreciated this part. It does a plant hardiness check for all of those varieties that I chose. It checks to make sure that they're hardy enough for my zone and where I live, which was good. I thought that was good. Like if I was a beginner trying to do something and I pull up, these plant names out of thin air without really knowing too much about them, this exercise would help with that, to say, yes, you can grow this, or no, you can't grow that in your zone. I thought that was good. Then they adjusted the layout. They have some things that are specific to Nova Scotia because we have a lot of wind, or if we are near the coast, we're not right up the coast, close enough, but we don't have the salt issue. They're just saying just some precautions and things to be aware of. Nova Scotia soil can be clay heavy, so they talk about anything that's specific to your location, your geography. It provides some tips. Pollinator bonus. These plants will attract bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds throughout the season, even in cooler Nova Scotia summers, which it did. Okay, now this part is kind of a continuation of the perennial garden that I was just talking about, the one along the south side of my yard. And what I decided to do was I dug up an old pre-planting photo of the side yard. This isn't even, the construction in the area isn't even finished yet, but I found this photo because it showed the flower bed really well. And I said, let me just close this and get back to the prompt. I basically uploaded the photo and I asked ChatGPT, using the attached photo, can you add plants to the flower bed? Now it's basically all the plants that we were just talking about for the pollinator garden, and with all the purples and the salvia and the butterfly bushes and whatnot. So this is what it came up with, which it has all the plants we talked about, all the different colors, the whites, the purples, the light lavender blues, all of that was there. So I thought that was really cool that it could do that with my space. This is my house and my path, and add the plants that I wanted. And they actually look pretty realistic. Now, word of caution, not every AI tool does this good a job. Like I tried it with Copilot and they looked cartoony to me. So if the first tool that you're trying doesn't do it for you, use another tool. I particularly like ChatGPT for the gardening stuff, just because it does come up with some really somewhat realistic looking photos. All right, so then I said, I thought that looked a little bit busy. So I asked it to use less plants, and it came up with this, which is pretty good. It's still pretty good. It's spaced out. You can see some of the mulch underneath there. And again, now what my bed really looks like is that it's 4 feet up on the left side, and then it goes down to about 7 feet wide down below, and the whole thing is about 45 feet long. Not that matters. It's just trying to give you a sense of this is what it kind of looks like with these plants in this space. So then I asked it I didn't like the path, because this year we're planning on redoing our paths or adding some flagstone to the path. So I asked it to do that in my photo, which it did. And I thought that looked great. It might be a little rigid, like I wouldn't have laid down those stones that way, but at least it gives me an idea of what it would look like with those stones. And I mean, I can go back and forth and say, make it a little bit less parallel, or make it a little bit more random, but whatever. I thought this was a good exercise to see what that path is actually going to look like. And it just opens up, the possibilities. And then I said, you know what, let's have some fun. Then I asked, can you change the plants to make a more tropical vibe? And then I came up with this, which I thought was awesome. Now, I don't know, like I'm looking at some of these plants and I don't actually think they would survive our winters, but nonetheless, I asked it to make it tropical. it made it tropical, and just a really fun color scheme. There's some annuals in there, like these are cannas, and they will not survive my winter, but regardless, I thought that was pretty cool. So I said, okay, let me try, let me keep pushing the envelope and see what else I can make it do. Next thing was, how about changing the plants to make a Japanese style garden? And it came up with this. And I liked I don't know if this little Japanese maple is to size. It might have a miniature version like this, it could be, but I like the little not statue, but whatever this thing is. It's got some irises in there, some rocks. I thought that was really interesting. And like, you can play around with it, with whatever your imagination comes up with, and it will do it, whatever you ask it to do. And then the last question I asked was, how about a very structured and modern vibe with whites, yellows, and greens? And it came up with this, which is very modern, clean, structured, whites, yellows, and greens. I thought that was really cool. And I just wanted to demo this to show you what it can do. Like, you could take a picture of anywhere in your garden, in your space, and upload it, and then ask AI to add stuff to it, and then make modifications and switch it up and try some new ideas. And it's much easier to go through this type of exercise than, digging and planting and then find out you don't like it or it doesn't look good in your space. If you've been wanting to start a garden but felt overwhelmed, I hope this video gave you the confidence to take that first step. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to. If you want more videos like this, leave a note in the comments. Thanks for being here, and happy gardening, everybody.